All right. Chapter 6, we're going to talk about using standardized tests and self-assessment procedures in career counseling. As you know, assessments are going to be crucial in this line of work, and you'll see that mirrored in the expectations of you for the signature assignment for this course. So, using standardized tests and self-assessment in career counseling. The career counseling movement has been literally defined by the measurement movement. So, using assessment inventories has occurred since the very beginning. Aptitude tests were developed in the mid 1940s and have been widely used in educational and vocational counseling. So, during the last 3 decades, more emphasis has been placed on skills identification through informal techniques. And so, we'll talk about some of the differences between some of the formal assessment strategies as well as informal. So, in order to talk about assessments, we have to talk about some of the psychometric properties for selecting assessment instruments. And so, we know that this is an important part of gathering info on our clients, helping them do some self assessment. Identify problems, identify appropriate interventions, as well as outcome evaluation. Are we doing what we're set out to do? In order to, you know, select the right assessment, you have to be familiar with psychometric concepts in order to use the correct assessment. So, what is reliability? Reliability is the stability of a test. So, this is the degree to which a test score is dependable and consistent, meaning that after multiple trials of the same assessment, it will yield approximately the same result every single time you deliver it. And so it means that those correlation coefficients remain stable over time. So there are many factors that affect stability of an assessment. So your daily moods of the client, group differences such as gender or ethnicity, individual differences within groups, so things like genetics, age, and learning, the nature of the performance. So, specifically, like achievement tests, naturally, that can affect stability over time, or an interest inventory. A client's interests may change with time, as well as the internal consistency of the test itself. So, does the test have internal consistency? Does it have that reliability coefficient? And then to the degree that something is valid. So the meaningfulness and the usefulness of certain inferences based on a test is derived from the test in question. So is this test valid? Is it meaningful and useful? So there's many different types of validity. So content validity, involves the opinions of experts. Do the test questions adequately sample measures of skills, abilities, values, interests, or personality? Criterion validity is determined by the degree to which test scores predict the success for outcome criteria, meaning an aptitude test. The individual scores with a normative group. So the NCE is a aptitude test. There's a normative group. There's essentially the group that is taking the test all together, right? They're norming that test, and then your scores are compared to that normative group. Construct validity is the evidence that the interpretation of the score is associated with the theoretical implications of that construct label. So if the test is supposed to be scoring a client's depression level, then is the score accurate to that? Is it always going to be assessing for that construct? So choosing the right assessment and or instrument. Reality is the population of the US is constantly changing and becoming more diverse. So career counselors have to be ready for new clients, meaning we have to be prepared to assess for diversity and utilize diverse assessments. So we have to use standardized tests with caution, as not all assessments have been normed with the specific population of the client that might be sitting in front of you. So you have to test and make sure that it's been normed to your individual client's gender, age, race, ethnicity, national origin, religion, and or sexual orientation, disability, language, or even socioeconomic status. So you have to read the test manual carefully to determine if that client is the right fit for that assessment. Does it have valid and reliable analysis for that population? So we should obtain information about the client's preferred language, SES, ethnicity, before we even deliver an assessment and ensure that it's the right match to that client. Assessment goals in career counseling. We know that within career counseling, we're going to have different goals for assessment. There's going to be different reasons why we should be using assessments with our clients. So you can refer to your text to see what assessments kind of pair with each goal and what assessments they recommend using for the goal you're trying to achieve. So with identifying career beliefs. We know that all of us are coming in to our life with certain sets of beliefs. Those career beliefs are constructed throughout our lifetime. And so different assessments can help you kind of see what career beliefs folks are holding. We've talked about the importance of identifying skills, proficiencies, and abilities, and how that's continued to rise in importance within the area of career counseling. Identifying academic achievement. So these are considered in higher education. So how successful is someone going to be in a future career? So ACT, SAT, those types of tests are forms of academic achievement tests. Then we have identifying and confirming interest levels. So when you think about career interests, you probably took an interest assessment even in high school. Not always the most helpful if you're not allowed to explore and, really understand kind of how an assessment is deriving upon the interests that match your interests. Discovering personality variables. So when we're looking at especially like trait and factor, think about it. We talked about matching an individual based on their skill, their achievement, their interest, their personality, their values. So all of these things can be goals of career counseling. Exploring career maturity. So in what degree is someone mature enough in the career world to make this decision? So it's actually utilizing the developmental stages and tasks that we talked about, like in Super's theory, and trying to apply that with an assessment to see where this client is in this kind of stage of the process. And then sometimes the goal is to use computer assisted guidance to help in this assessment process. And so I talked about how teaching our clients how to use things like ONET and Occupational Outlook Handbook. Those can be an important part of the process and in the self-assessment and in the cycle of a client continuing to revisit kind of what they want to be doing and utilizing kind of websites to allow for that exploration process to continue even without you. There are many self-assessment procedures. And so naturally in counseling, we're wanting the clients to constantly self-reflect and see how they can continue this assessment process on what they want in a career. And there's many different ways to do that. So autobiography is very simple. It is literally allowing the client to explore their career story. It can be as simple as tell me about the jobs you've held up until this point, creating a lifeline of how you've done that over a career. Tell me your career story. An autobiography, that exercise that we used to use when I was teaching an exploratory majors course for undergrad freshmen was tell me where you see yourself in 5 years. Tell me where you see yourself in 10 years. And then we would have them write a biography of a future career autobiography of where they see themselves in 5 or 10 years to allow that to also speak into where they're going and how they're going to get there, to allow them exploring kind of the way they make decisions, and the way that they can begin to make that plan for themselves. We can utilize specific questions to uncover specific variables. So you might have specific questions focused on family values or who's the most influential person in your life until this point, right? That allows them to explore maybe some support systems that can help them make this decision. Of course, we have interest identification. So this is where you can use the strong interest inventory, but a really fun one that's talked about in your text is the interest bombardment. So you have the client list 20 things that they're interested in, and then out in the left, they're going to utilize certain kind of codes. So T, where they're going to need more training, R, if it invokes risk, PL for planning, A or P, meaning it's done alone or with people or both, a date put beside the last time they've completed that interest. They can star their favorite 5. And then the text has many other prompts that generate ideas about interests. The lifeline is kind of similar to that autobiography, but you're using a little bit of art, where you're drawing a line from birth to death, and you have the client identify key life experiences and where they're at in their present position. From there, they can develop different chapters. They can label those chapters when they went to school, when was their first job, and they develop times for each chapter. What were the high points that they remember? What were the low points? Who were the important people? What is the significance of each person? Adjectives to describe each chapter. And then they create a title for each chapter. Really allows for some deeper exploration of how it led them to the point that they're at. Some guided fantasy. So this is where you actually start with a relaxation technique, and then you establish the fantasy itself. So, you know, I'm going to wave a magic wand and you're, sitting in at your ideal job. Tell me what you're seeing. Tell me what you're hearing, what you're smelling, where you're sitting. Are you sitting? Are you standing? And discuss their reactions to that fantasy experience. So jump on the question answer discussion board if you have any questions about kind of the assessment procedures in career counseling.